welcome to Beyond the Paradigm. Today's episode, we revisit the incident in 1947 which happened in Roswell, New Mexico. My guest is L.A Marzulli, who has been on location at the actual crash site and the hangar in which it was said that the spacecraft was taken. If you enjoyed this episode, can I first of all ask you to give it a like? And secondly, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, please subscribe. Well, LA, for the second time on Beyond the Paradigm, thank you for joining me, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, it's a real pleasure. So, like I said to you off air, I've watched both of the documentaries that you've done, because I know you've done a number of documentaries, but this one in particular regarding Roswell. But what I wanted to do, just before we get sort of your thoughts on what went down at Roswell, been doing a little bit of research on it, and I go on the FBI vault quite a lot and look at different documents, and I was surprised that there was actually only one document regarding Roswell on there. It's basically half a page, but so basically this document is from the FBI Dallas, and it's 8th of July 1947, and it was done at 6:17 p.m. Some of it's redacted, but it states flying disc information concerning headquarters 8th Air Force telephonically advised this office that an object purporting to be a flying disc was recovered near Roswell, New Mexico on this date. The disc is hexagonal in shape and was suspended from a balloon by cable, which balloon has approximately 20 feet in diameter. Further advised that the object found resembles a high-altitude weather balloon with a radar reflector, but that telephonic conversation between their office and Wright Field had not borne out this belief. Disc and balloon being transported to Wright Field. So obviously that was reported as a weather balloon, like they have reported it. But the interesting thing for this is that it says telephonically the conversation didn't bear that out. So clearly there's something amiss here regarding what's been reported. So in your opinion, what's actually gone on at Roswell?
Well, it was not a weather balloon. And that's why we call the film exoneration, because Jesse Marcel Sr. was the fall guy. I mean, we've had too many deathbed confessions. When you watch the films, there's people that we reference all in the last month or last 2 months of their life went on the record, told somebody what they had seen, what they had witnessed. And this is a deathbed confession. This was a major cover-up. This is a copy of the paper right there from July 8th. This is the Roswell Roswell record. So Mr. and Mrs. Dan Wilmot were the only persons in Roswell, apparently, who have seen what they thought was a flying disc. So they were sitting out there on the porch. Mr. Wilmot called Mrs. Wilmot. They both went down to watch this thing for about 40 to 45 seconds. Wilmot said, this is the nexus of the case. This is the whole thing, right? Wilmot said that it appeared to be about 1,500 feet high and going fast, 400 to 500 miles an hour. Weather balloons do not do 400 to 500 miles an hour at 1,500 feet. They just don't. They're blown by the prevailing winds. Okay. In appearance, it looked oval in shape, like two inverted saucers. How many times do we have to hear this? What are two inverted saucers? It's a flying saucer. Face mouth to mouth, or like two old-type wash bowls placed together in the same fashion. The entire body glowed as though light were showing through from the inside, though not like it would be if a light were merely underneath. Wilmot, from where he stood, he said the object was probably about 20 feet, and it goes on from there. The bottom line is this cover-up's been going on for 70 years. We went to the debris field. We found 2 pieces of metal. We had the metal tested. That's the metal in my hand right there. That's what it looks like. It was buried about 6 to 8 inches below the surface of the ground. And we also show a telegram that General Ramey had in his hand. That's the work of Mr. Rudiak. And we show all this in the film. This was a cover-up. It's plain and simple. It was a cover-up. And Jesse Marcel Sr. is the Lee Harvey Oswald of ufology. That's just the way it works. And they've been doing this now for 70 years. Deny, deny, deny. We also show a clip that we believe is authentic. My business partner in all this, the co-director, the co-producer, Gil Zimmerman, and I have looked at this footage. It's a black and white footage, which makes sense from 1947 because they didn't have color. Well, they had color film. That's not true. They had color film, but this guy is running around. If it's a fake, for what reason? There's at least 20 to 25 different people that you can count in this clip. It's short, and the cameraman is he can't see because people keep coming in front of him to see the body on the stretcher. I think it's authentic. So the cameraman's always moving around trying to get a picture at this thing. And it's a body on a stretcher, and they bring it in. This goes verbatim from what the witnesses say. Everybody's in period costume. The set is dialed in. It's all military. So, could you make something like this? Well, of course you can make something like this. But for why? For what purpose? And then there's this one shot, we show it in the film, where the body is plainly seen on the stretcher. This is why everyone is flocking in front of the cameraman to see it. We also have a deathbed confession from Colonel Hill, who was flown into Roswell, more than likely from Dallas Fort Worth within 48 hours after the crash. There was one body that was still alive. Hill was former OSS. He tried to communicate with the entity, couldn't do it, and that was the end. That's a deathbed confession. Colonel Hill died a month later after he told his caregivers what he had seen. So then we have the Marcels, and Jesse Marcel Sr. packed up some of the wreckage in a cardboard box, went back, awakened his wife and his son, Jesse Marcel Jr., and displayed the wreckage on the kitchen floor. So why would Jesse Marcel Sr. do that? First of all, he's the intelligence officer of the 509th Bombing Group. This isn't Elmer Fudd. This is a highly trained, intelligent man. The 509th Bombing Group is the only bombing group at that time with a nuclear capability. Those are the guys who dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atom bomb on both of those cities. So this guy is like, he knows what he's looking at. And this was wreckage from an unseen world. And we show a clip where he's actually out in the debris field. And he basically says, General Ramey, we show pictures of Ramey, basically says this. This is July 9th. Ramey says excitement not justified, and that's where the whole weather balloon story is concocted. Jesse Marcel, and we also have Walter G. Hott, who comes on the record, deathbed confession. It's a deathbed affidavit, not to be read until after he's dead. And he basically says he was taking the Hangar 84. The bodies were under a tarp. There was the wreckage. The thing was about 20 feet in diameter. It was flown to Wright Pat. I mean, how many times do we need to hear this? So everybody's lying on a deathbed confession just to throw everybody, come on. People who are burdened down with a lie, eventually they tell somebody. They have to. Human beings are not capable of lying indefinitely. That's my take on it.
It's interesting you mentioned Lieutenant Walter G. Hawk, because I was reading it. I've actually got it in front of me, and there is some really interesting points on that. I mean, obviously, he talks about that he was stationed at Roswell, and he was aware that Major Jesse Marcel, head of intelligence, was sent by the base commander. But he goes on obviously about passing this metal around and how
the table.
yeah,
right.
and it says here pieces which resemble metal foil, paper thin yet extremely strong, and pieces with unusual markings along their length were handled from man to man, each voicing their opinion, and no one was able to identify the crash debris. But he goes on to say, like you mentioned, the bodies, and he says that in this he was informed that a temporary morgue was set up to accommodate the recovered bodies. And then he says finally, towards the end, that, and this is his words, I am convinced that what I personally observed was some type of craft and its crew, and in his words, were from outer space. So clearly, you know, like you said, we've got people with deathbed confessions, and that obviously was from 2002, his affidavit, and he didn't die until 2005. And obviously that's witnessed and everything, and that's
Right.
just another sort of piece of the puzzle. Um, Now, obviously, we've got Jesse Marcel and Jesse Marcel Jr. And do you believe that these people are credible? Like you said before, why
Oh,
would they lie?
this is the reason why we call the film Exoneration, is because Marcel was a patsy. That's what he was. He was a patsy. He was set up. And so
Mm.
the whole point of the film is to show that Jesse Marcel Sr. was a patsy. There's also a a dramatic recreation of a um, question and answer that I did with Jesse Marcel Jr. That's in the film. It's in the opening part of the film, Exoneration. Then we flew up and we interviewed his Jesse Marcel Jr.'s widow and his daughter, one of his best friends. And these guys are all on film. And then we have all these other people in and around the film. And we call it because we call it Exoneration because this guy was set up. And it has besmirched the family's name for decades. And so everybody's always talking about Roswell, but nobody ever thinks about, wow, what happened to the Marcels? They were dragged through the mud. It impacted their family greatly. And so that's why we call it Exoneration. To think that Marcel would confuse a weather balloon for a craft from another world, in my opinion, is patently absurd. Patently absurd. It's just nonsense.
In the film, as part of it, I think it might be, is it Jesse Marcel Jr.'s daughter, I think. I might, and she talks about how, like, basically her father was followed, they were followed. They used to call the house, and then they'd answer the phone and no one would be there. And then apparently at some point he ended up speaking with someone at the White House or something. Can you just fill us in regarding that a bit more detail?
Yeah. Jesse Marcel Jr. was invited to the White House, and he was basically escorted underground down into like a briefing room, a skiff, a secured area, and that was by Congressman D'Amato. And we show the handwritten phone number from the congressman that was given to Marcel. If something happens, call me. So, and I'm turning the air conditioner. And I mean, that was a real coup because that's never been publicized before.
Mm,
So I mean, we went up there, we talked to Jesse Marcel Jr.'s widow. We got all this information. There's a clip that we show of Marcel Sr., like I said before, in the debris field. He's basically just saying, it's like General Ramey and I both knew different. This was not a weather balloon. We both knew different. And he looks right at the camera when he says that. The man's not lying. I'm a student of body language. What if he's lying? Come on. It
mm,
was not a weather balloon. There was a film a number of years ago by a bunch of Christian guys that went out there and basically at the end of the film, these two guys, I'm not going to mention any names, but they're trying to tell us that Roswell was a weather balloon. I basically got up and walked out of the theater at that point. I mean, you guys,
mm,
they never sat down with Jesse Mars or the Marcells. They never did that. We did. And all the research. And then we go to the debris field. They never went to the debris field. We found two pieces of metal buried 8 inches in the ground. What's that doing there? The entire area has been seeded with spikes like this to throw off metal detectors. So if there's nothing to see, if there's just a weather balloon, then why are you seeding the field where the wreckage was collected with 12-inch metal spikes? Why are you doing that? If
mm,
it's a weather balloon, then who cares, right? But no, see, it's not a weather balloon. It's not a weather balloon. And they know they didn't get it all. And that's why they seeded the field, the debris field, with these 12-inch metal spikes. We found one with the metal detector, Frank Kimbler. We found one, but we also found 2 pieces of the wreckage, and we had that tested. And it's basically an aluminum alloy that doesn't match anything. Doesn't match anything. So what's that? You tell me. This was a cover up, just like Dallas 2.0 3 weeks ago, coming up Saturday. It's the same, brought to you by the same people who obfuscate, who, in my opinion, lie, who do the Texas two-step. It was Dallas 2.0. I'm way off topic here, but these are the same guys. They control the narrative. Oh, there's nothing to see here. We don't even know the make of the rifle that was shot. And we don't even know why is it that you hear the gunshots from one gun and then you hear a completely different sound from another gun which is being fired, and then what sounds like a kill shot. So, but nobody, and then, oh, well, the roof was too steep. We had to call the guy out. Excuse me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable where we are. Well, these are the same people, in my opinion. It's the same mindset, maybe not the same people, but it's the same mindset. Lie, obfuscate, don't answer, stonewall. I don't remember. That's the famous Hillary Clinton statement. Oh, I don't remember. I don't recall. I don't remember. There you go. It's where we are. There's an ancient scripture. It's from Isaiah 59, verse 14. It says this: justice is turned back. Justice is turned back. Okay? Righteousness stands far away. Truth is thrown to the street. And honesty cannot come in. And this is where we are. This is where we are. We don't have a country. We just get to live here and pay enormous taxes and watch the mainstream controlled media tell us what to think and give us the narrative. I don't even recognize this country anymore. I don't, but I digress.
No, I'm the same as you with where I live. I don't recognize it, but it's hardly surprising when obviously our Lord said that the devil is the god of this world and he's the father of lies. So it's no wonder that all we get is lies. And I'm with you, they just lie, they obfuscate, I don't remember type stuff. So there's never any truth comes out ever. And now one of the parts of your documentary is you go to the hangar, you go to Hangar 84, you managed to get in there. Tell us about that and what was apparently went on in the hangar.
The Hangar 84, and we've got this multiple witnesses. This is the hangar where they brought the wreckage and the bodies. Everything was then shipped to Wright Pat. That hangar has not changed in 70 years. Has not changed. It's the same hangar. Yes, they've done maintenance on it. It's the same hangar. So I've learned over the years that sometimes you got to push the envelope. You just got to. And so we were there on the other side of the fence. Obviously, we're not inside the hangar. Some guy smoking a cigarette on the other side of the fence. I run up to him and go, we're a small film crew from California. Is there a possibility that we could get in? Yeah, come up to the front of the building. Next thing I know, I'm speaking to the head guy who controls the hangar. Yeah, I'll be down in 20 minutes. He comes down in 20 minutes. We talk to him. Next thing you know, we're interviewing him in a conference room. And after that, he brings us into Hangar 84. And I'm standing in Hangar 84. Unbelievable. Where the bodies were kept. And then we've got Walter G. Haught's deathbed confession, which talks about that. There's another clip we have from a gentleman whose grandmother worked at the Roswell base. It's not in the film. And he states on the record, deathbed confession from his grandmother about a month before she'd passed away. And they're driving her around the old Army base. And he jokingly says to her, is that the building where they kept the bodies? Or where did they keep the bodies, Grandma? And she goes, that building over there, it's Hangar 84. Deathbed confession. She said, yeah, we didn't go in and see it. They wouldn't let us, but that's where all the records and the bodies were kept. I mean, how many times do we have to hear this before we realize that, how many times, going back to Dallas, there's a book by Jerome Corsi and Dr. Mantic, which is like fairly recent. And I read it, very technical, medically technical, and in some cases over my head, because I'm not a doctor, but I waded through it. Now I'm reading a book called Chokehold. I mean, they were probably 2 teams, 3 teams of shooters in Dallas. Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing to do with it. Yet the American people were told this ridiculous story. The Warren Commission, 900 and whatever it is, a gazillion pages, and they don't interview half the witnesses that have a different story. And you get the magic bullet, which does a U-turn mid-flight. And then finally, after years, on Geraldo Rivera, they show, this is a Zapruder film, back and to the left, back and to the left. If you get hit from behind, you go forward. That, and unless you want to somehow redo Newton's, second law of thermodynamics, this is, you get hit from the front, you go back and to the left. The kill shot came from the grassy knoll, but probably at the same time, another shot. They were coordinated. And the motorcade stopped to almost 0 miles an hour at the kill shot. I've been behind the grassy knoll. I've been behind the picket fence. It's less than 60 feet away. It's beyond it. It's shooting the fish in a barrel at that point. And they found metal casings there, I think in the 2000s, sometime in the last 10 years. Somebody had the brilliant idea, maybe we should dig behind and just see what we can find her. They found 2 shell casings. Not making this stuff up. So, what's interesting is in 2017, Commander David Fravor came on Tucker Carlson show and talked about the Tic Tac shaped UFO that he encountered, that he went head to head with, basically. And this is not a weather balloon. And then Luis Elizondo, we've got metal from unknown craft. And then Christopher Mellon, we've tested the metal. It's got isotopic ratios not found on this Earth. And then the Pentagon releases the film of the Tic Tac shaped UFO. And then the Pentagon releases their goofy 9-page report on UFOs. Out of the 144 cases, they were only able to debunk 1. The rest of them are unknown. And it just goes on from there. NASA is hiring priests. We need to prepare for an alien invasion. Robert Salas releases a book, Maelstrom. This is all in my upcoming book, by the way, which will be out in October, The Rungs of Disclosure. And it's all there. We are going up into disclosure. But now, a couple of weeks ago, Luis Elizondo, he's being threatened, as are other whistleblowers. You get David Grush, a whistleblower in Congress, looking up at Nancy Mace, Representative Nancy Mace from South Carolina, and saying, we have retrieved non-human biologics. And what do you guys do with that? Who's lying? Who's pulling whose chain? So how many people do we have to get on the record? And of course, Congress is just being stonewalled. They can't get to first base. There's a clip I show from one of the more recent reports from Congress coming out of the meeting. Got nowhere. Nothing happened. It's like a waste of my time because they're not going to tell you anything anyway. They're not. The whistleblowers will, but now the whistleblowers are being threatened. So like the one congressman who came out of that meeting basically said, no, this isn't our country. We just get to live here. There's no accountability. There is no accountability. No one knows what is going on and who's doing what. Nobody knows.
Yeah, it's so compartmentalized, and that's the reason. So, but like you're talking about the rungs of disclosure, and even over here now, because one of the criticism that's obviously leveled is, and I said this to your friend Tim Alberino, one of the criticisms that we often get leveled that I read on social media and I listen to people over here is, why is it always the Americans? And that's what people say. But I had an answer for them because we actually had in the Daily Mail this year in March, there was an article and it was all surrounding a UFO crash retrieval in the 1980s in the north of England. And it was a British.
Forest?
No, this is a separate incident than that.
Okay.
This is in the late 1980s, and the actual guy who spoke about it is an ex-paratrooper, military intelligence officer now. He's called Frank Milburn. He's a veteran. It wasn't him who was on this crash retrieval, but he's got a colleague who was basically, it was a high-level secret unit known as E Squadron, or it used to be called the Increment, and it specializes in covert and clandestine paramilitary operations. Now it's made up of the most experienced people from the SAS and the SBS and the Special Reconnaissance Regiment. So in terms of the United States, your equivalent would be the CIA's Special Operations Group or Tier 1 units such as Delta Force, SEAL Team 6. Now, Milburn, who tells the story, he's actually a Falklands veteran. He served in the Falklands in 1982. And he basically said that there's been RAF craft, and it wasn't, they were told by the RAF, sorry, that this craft had crashed. And they was told that it wasn't Russian, it wasn't American, and it wasn't ours. And he said that the increment E team was sent to secure this craft, which was in the north of England, and they were flown in by a helicopter, and they established a cordon and a perimeter, and they approached the craft. There wasn't a real description given of the craft, but what they did say is whatever occupants were in it had fled the scene on foot. So part of the unit were left protecting the craft. Maybe about up to 8 men were left to cordon the area of the craft off, and the rest set off on foot and quad bikes and 4x4s, trying to track down these entities with some helicopters supporting them. And basically, he said that after that, the scientists and technicians came flown in by helicopter, and they basically took over the entire area, and that was then taken completely out of their hands. And that was reported in the Daily Mail, and attached to that report there was also a document which has been disclosed now, and it was highlighting the threat that the RAF have faced over the last 30 years, and there's been 100 fatalities from RAF personnel that have come into close contact with UAPs. So even over here now, there's like you're saying, there's the rungs of disclosure. It's even coming out in our mainstream media as well now.
And it will continue.
Mm.
This is why this new book, Gil Zimmerman and I did 10 films on the whole UFO phenomenon. And folks can go there, streaming.lamarzulli.net for $4.99. You can watch them. You can watch one film, which, where else are you going to find less than a cup of coffee, for crying out loud? We're trying to make it available. The new book, Rungs of Disclosure, comes out the end of October. That's being published by Charisma. And we're very excited about the book because I truly believe we are on the cusp of full disclosure. And it will not come down the way most people think it's going to come down. I think it comes on the heels of a nuclear event. And I wrote about this in the book. It's not in any of our films, but actually, that's not true. In What is the Truth, which is 9 and 10 of the UFO Disclosure film series, I talk about this. I talk about what I think is the final rung when they just show up. They'll show up after a nuclear event. And I think we're close to that. I think we're very close to that.
I mean, we've been being prepared for such a long time, even in terms of films. I mean, science fiction is such a big, area of the film industry. I mean, I love science fiction films. I mean, the first ever film that I watched at the cinema was E.T. My mum took me to watch E.T. That was the first film I ever got taken to the pictures to watch. And it feels like, I mean, we know that the whole world lies in the wicked one, and he's controlling these things. And clearly, we've been being prepared for such a long time. And like you said, they're just going to show up. We've had loads of films where they show up, like the Independence Day film. They
Sure.
show up with these massive craft. So it would seem that we are being prepared for this. Now, in terms of crash retrieval, there's actual UFO crash retrieval teams, isn't there? Like I mentioned one from over here, but Roswell's not the only sort of craft that's been recovered, is it? I mean, what's some more sort of high? I did a number of episodes on it, and some of them, I can't just remember off the top of my head. But what other ones would you say are quite important ones for us to sort of know about?
Well, Kecksburg was one that most people have heard about. I've been to the site in Pennsylvania. Um, Not sure what we're looking at with that. There's one in the 30s, the Black Forest one in Germany, which basically was the Third Reich's Roswell. That's where perhaps some of the back engineering took place. There's other reports of crashed disk. I know one in Colorado, one in New Mexico, another one in New Mexico. But these things are, I mean, they're just they come down like crazy. We had a report from a guy, a man's daughter, whose father was like special forces, and he told her that one day he was dispatched. His team had just gotten back from one mission. They were instantly dispatched to another place, and there was a disc. And they went in. They went up, and they were bodies in the disc. They set up a perimeter, and then they came in and retrieved the crash. I mean, we hear this, and of course, everything is under the radar. Philip Corso talks about this in his book, A Day After Roswell, about disseminating pieces of the wreckage, getting it back engineered. Moreover, the Super Bowl ran an ad in 2024, and the ad was for some stupid website that you saw for 3 seconds at the end of the film, at the end of the commercial. That 1 minute ad cost millions and millions of dollars. And basically it was predictive programming, in my opinion. So there's Texas. There's this couple eating at a diner in Texas. They're obsessed with their iPhones. They're not looking what's going on. In New York City, there's people walking on the streets, a woman looking at her iPhone, and she's the headline is, UFOs are real, whatever, and she scrolls past that and goes to a cat clawing the toilet paper, and then she laughs. Then it cuts to a bunch of picnickers in Paris near the Eiffel Tower, and you see the shadow of a UFO come over them. They're completely oblivious. Then it cuts to a Japanese boardroom where there's two UFOs. It's like, the windows are like this, and the UFOs are jumping up and down and doing all this stuff. Everyone's oblivious. They're all on their iPhones. So the next part of that little commercial is it cuts up to a gray with an elongated skull, like the ones that you see behind me, and he presses a button and takes control over all media on the planet. And it says, "Hey, down there," and it's got a group of grays that are staring at you on your iPhone. All of a sudden, everybody looks up. So in Texas, the couple eating at the diner, there's the UFO reflecting. They all see it. They're kind of going like this. New York City, they're all looking up, mile-wide craft. The Eiffel Tower, all the picnickers, they're all looking up, standing up. Japan, they've rushed. They're out of the boardroom. Now they're up against the windows looking at the UFOs. This is predictive programming, in my opinion. They're signaling that it's global when they show up. It's just not one craft. It's global, it's coordinated, and it changes everything. I call it the coming great deception. The book of Revelation tells us that there'll be a one world government and a one world religious system. That begs the question, how do you do that? How are you going to change everybody's paradigm? Well, you get a mile wide disc over any place, specifically over many different cities, which is what the commercial shows. Everything changes. And the neo-Darwinists will tell us, ha, our creators are finally here, because they realize that the DNA molecular structure just didn't jump into existence. Somebody created it somewhere, and it didn't evolve. So they're looking panspermia. They're looking out there to the stars to see where all this came from. So when so-called ET shows up, yay, now we know who created us. Well, not so fast, citizen. Do we believe what they say? Of course not. This is the coming great deception that sets up the global one world government, the one world religious system. Everything changes. Life as we know it changes dramatically, completely, and in some cases instantaneously when this shows up. But these are not our space brothers from some faraway galaxy. These are the fallen ones. These are the fallen angels who have come back to usher mankind into what I call the Great Tribulation, or what the Bible calls the Great Tribulation. But it is the great deception that Second Thessalonians talks about, because they did not believe the truth. God sends them a strong delusion. What's that strong delusion? Well, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. He was the life was the light of men. Light shines in the darkness. Darkness comprehends it not. That's the truth. Jesus speaks everything into existence. He holds all things together. These are not space brothers from Zeta Reticuli, but the fact that ancient aliens for the last 15 years or whatever promulgates the ancient astronaut theory, your kids, your grandkids are already watching this stuff and believing the lie.
Yeah.
And that's where we are. I got to get going. I can give you like another 10 minutes, and then
Yeah,
I
that's
got to
fine.
go
That's
Philly.
no
Yeah.
problem. I'll just ask you then my last question, really. Cattle mutilations. I watched a documentary a lot of years ago about this. I mean, like I've been sort of around these circles with UFOs for 20 odd years, and but the cattle mutilation thing and the crop circles was the thing that sort of brought me in properly. But it's such a disturbing phenomena. I mean, I was reading a document earlier from FBI that talks about even that the sexual organs were taken off the udders, the tongues. But one of the things that stands out for me is regarding obviously the blood and how it's drained from them, and it's almost surgical. I mean, I know you've done a documentary on it. What's your opinion on what's going on with these cattle mutilations? Because it's so
Cattle
bizarre.
mutilations have been going on for a long time. Law enforcement has never brought anybody to justice because it's not human beings that are doing it. The cow is drained of blood, like you mentioned. Sex organs are cored out, tongues, eyes, ears, udders, anuses, all these things are cored out. The carcass is completely drained of blood. The predators, the vultures, even sometimes the insects, nothing gets near it. There's also a spike in radiation in many cases. What people don't know, and this is what we talk about in the film, and we may be, I'm not saying we are, but we may be the first group of researchers to connect the dots. When a woman is taken against her will, kidnapped, and then impregnated by them, that entity, that fetus, is removed in the third month of her pregnancy. That fetus needs some place to go into to come into full term. Cow's blood and human blood is interchangeable. You can use bovine blood, cow blood in a human transfusion. In our opinion, what they are creating are artificial wombs. And so when they reabduct the woman, they take the fetus from her womb, they place it in an artificial womb that they've created from the cow's blood and the organs that were extracted from the cow. That's conjecture, but that's what we think it is.
Yeah, it was one of the most disturbing parts of the UFO phenomena for me was
Very,
that.
very. Our film on cattle mutilations is not for the faint of heart. It's a very dark film. We call it Calling Card of Darkness. That's what we call it, the Calling Card of Darkness, because that's what it is. It's very disturbing. It was the most difficult film I've ever worked on, ever, ever.
So just before you go, then, what about crop circles? What's your opinion on them? Like I said, again, I watched a documentary on them a lot of years ago where there was someone on there and sort of debunking it, and there was a team of people that showed how it was done and everything. But there's been more elaborate designs than what they showed on there. I mean, these was basic designs what they were showing. But in your opinion, what are they?
There were a lot of hoaxes. I understand that. But that's why on our film on crop circles, we go to a crop circle that was created in Ohio about a month before our Nephilim conference in Ohio, where Gary Stearman, Russ Dizdar, Chief Joseph Riverwind, Fritz Zimmerman, and myself, we were all there. And it's right across, the crop circle was made across from one of the ancient mound sites, which we call Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. It was in a field of corn that was 8 feet tall. You cannot create a crop circle in a field of corn that's 8 feet tall because you can't move in it. It's not like the wheat where it's only 2 or 3 feet high and you've got string and you got stakes and you got guys running. You can't do that there, can you? Can't do it. And the crop was woven like this. We show pictures of it. The crop wasn't just flattened, the crop was woven. And it was the second largest crop circle in ever recorded in American history. Yes, there's a ton of fakes out there. We get that. This was not a fake, which is why we focus in our film on crop circles that this is the real deal. And it's right across it from, there's a river, there's high tension wires, electrical lines, and there's the ancient mounds, which I call Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. It all meshes like this. But you only get there if you hold to a biblical worldview. If you don't, then, well, you can't make sense out of anything. And that's why, because what we're looking at is the handiwork of the fallen angels. That's who it is.
Yeah, 100% with you on that, LA. Well, I know you're a busy guy, and thanks for your time anyway that you've given me today. It's been a fascinating talk with you, like last time. Just before you go, then, just let people know about your website and upcoming new books and projects.
Folks, we spent 45 minutes here, and we have 10 films. That's like 12 hours. We spend 45 minutes. You need to do your homework. I challenge you to do your homework. So you can go to our streaming site, streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. You can rent every film for $4.99. So every film is $4.99. You need to do your homework. You need to invest in it because and this is the problem. People are lazy today. People don't read anymore. They just don't. They want everything in a 1 minute short. You're not going to get that. That's why there's 10 films on the UFO phenomena. If you want the hard copy, if you live across the pond, the best way to watch this is streaming. You can, bam, and you're watching right now, streaming.lamarzulli.net. Download the cattle mutilation film. It'll blow your mind. It'll absolutely blow your mind when you see that film. So that's how to, get a hold of us, or lamarzulli.com, lamarzulli.com.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that. Go on LA's site. There's plenty of information on there. Do a lot of reading. I do reading. LA's been doing this for years. He's the go-to guy in terms of, for Christians especially, regarding this UFO phenomena. And I can recommend his documentaries. Like I said, I've watched a couple of them. He's got numerous books. So thanks for your time, LA. I know you're busy,
Thanks,
so I'll
Paul.
let you
God
get
bless you,
going.
sir.
God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Take
So I'll be
care.
back next week, guys, with a new guest. I'm Paul, and this is Beyond the Paradigm.